We can talk about whether or not the old Need for Speed games are really better than the new ones, or is it just nostalgia, but they still won't change the fact that some things were actually made better in older Need for Speed titles than in the newer ones. And without further ado, let's jump straight to the first one. Let's be honest, soundtracks in old Need for Speed games were legendary. I wouldn't necessarily say they were better than the new ones, but they for sure flow better with a racing video game. Just imagine racing a final boss, having a neck-on-neck race, and then suddenly this masterpiece starts playing, and you start squeezing the accelerator button even harder, even though you know it won't go any faster. Or just imagine tuning your favorite JDM car while listening to this masterpiece. And then on the other hand we have Need for Speed Unbound soundtracks. And other latest Need for Speeds weren't much better either. They had some cool songs, yeah, but nothing that made you feel that Need for Speed. Another thing that made older Need for Speed games legendary were hot girls. We've all been watching Fast and Furious movies, and we know that with hot cars come hot girls. And that really spiced up the game. Every time you saw that fine ass, you immediately got hyped up. Or your little buddy got hyped up, if you know what I mean. But yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say that female characters in newer Need for Speeds are not good looking, but come on, cartoonish female characters against her, or even in other newer Need for Speeds, we never saw something like Black Box Studio brought us with Most Wanted, Pro Street, or even with Undercover. With this next one, probably some of you will not agree, but I honestly feel like drawing physics were better in older titles, and with that I even mean more realistic. For example, there was no tap to drift or brake to drift, and I honestly wouldn't complain if they kept the physics from Hot Pursuit, which were fun and still not that arcade, but in the newer ones it all feels so scripted and fake. But for me personally, Most Wanted had the best physics out of all. And on the other hand, we had for example Need for Speed Carbon or Underground 2, which in my opinion had really fun drift events, with separate driving model just for that, and was fun as hell. One thing that I can't figure out, and it bothers me every time a new Need for Speed is released, is why the hell we can't bind control buttons to our likings. Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 3 from 1998 had this option available, so I can't understand why they can't make this a thing in 2023. Well, at least they're giving us a picture how the buttons are binded. The ability to race a custom race, selecting your car, the opponents, turning pursuit on or off, selecting the weather, the race type, the laps, traffic density, and just going at it. These are quick races, or more exactly, they were. Since Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, they stopped including quick races as we knew. In games like Need for Speed Underground, Most Wanted and Carbon, back in the days there were actually esports leagues and tournaments, and people practiced the league tracks in quick race mode, and then later they would have the league races on them online. Now this can't even be a thing since we don't have a quick race mode. And basically with quick race mode they give you infinite replayability, so games won't get boring that quickly. I personally would love to get this feature back in the newer titles, and it is especially cool to not have to worry about your money in quick races, since you can choose any car you like and tune it however you want. This next one was seen in a few Need for Speeds, and that's tuning. The feature first appeared in Need for Speed Underground 2, and it was so ahead of its time, and it was really fun and amazing to have an option to tune your car as you wished. It then appeared in a much less extensive form in Need for Speed Most Wanted, and then it made its comeback in Need for Speed Pro Street and then Shift series as well. But this one can be aimed towards all newer titles. For example, Need for Speed 2015 actually had a really cool tuning potential as well, which therefore made it even more enjoyable. Shortcuts were basically removed from Need for Speed meta since Most Wanted 2012. And yes, some people will argue that they became stale and predictable, but I disagree. In games like Underground or Most Wanted, the decision to pick the right shortcut was vital in some races. Or you could even take a shortcut that turned out not to be a shortcut and could screw up your race. So taking a shortcut always had a risk-reward factor, and they for sure added more depth and character to the game. The last decent shortcut system was in Need for Speed Hot Pursuit. In the latest Need for Speeds I can't even imagine taking a shortcut through a narrow alley with the current handling physics, and probably the major problem with implementing them are checkpoints, which means that we are basically racing on an open world map, as in older Need for Speeds the track were fixed. But I would definitely like to see more. It's satisfying to remember all the shortcuts to get a better time. Stories in Need for Speed games are far from being the best, but still when you compare a story, for example from Need for Speed Most Wanted or Carbon, to a story in Need for Speed Heat or Unbound, the winner is obvious. The newer stories are too predictable and plain, and sometimes cringy as fuck. One more thing that made story mode better in older Need for Speeds were real-life characters and cutscenes which were recorded in real life. The last Need for Speed that did that was Need for Speed 2015, which had some really cool cutscenes with real-life characters. Despite not having a story mode as we were used to, it was still pretty cool. And also, older stories had that scary note. For example, Sergeant Cross hauling your ass all the time and giving you that fear of losing your car if you get busted by the cops. And with all that said, this is why older Need for Speeds were better in my opinion. Feel free to drop any other reason that I might missed out. There are of course some reasons why newer ones are better than the older ones, and I'll talk about them in another video. And until then, drop the like button, comment down below if you're a fan of old school or a new school Need for Speeds, and also don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss on future videos. And as always, have a great day and I'll see you in the next one.